Hi, guys. All right. Well, I think we are live now officially. And as you can see, I am Eric Burgess from Academy Games, joined by Uwe and Gunther here. Just ready to talk a little bit more about Stellaris and some of the recent developments that have happened, some of the playtesting we've had. Thanks for everybody that sent us nice comments about the recent update we did, where we went into some pretty deep detail. I had a great experience playtesting recently, and it was fun to sort of break that out. And of course, it was fun to win the game too. So so we had a good time talking through that sort of stuff. But today we want to answer some questions, talk through some of the questions people have had, in some cases about some of the rules specifically, and some of the things that came up in the conversation, and give you a little sense of what things are going on right now. All right.
Yeah, and I also want to say, if we don't cover some of your questions in this live stream, we have future live streams where we know specifically what we're going to be talking about in each live stream. So we will be covering your questions about how the game works and the rules in either this live stream or one of the upcoming live streams. So yeah.
All right. Well, let's get started. This was a great opportunity, I think, for us to get together. Since we were in the same location, since I'm in a different location typically than Gunther and Uwe, and it was nice to also get an updated version of the prototype. Which I know Gunther worked very hard to get a lot of our recent events in there, so that we could, get a chance to try those out. Of course, that's part of the process right now with the playtesting, is to actually make sure that all these fantastic events that we've been working on, some of which draw from the history of Stellaris, and some of which are brand new, and in fact, in some cases, introduce, I think, new and interesting mechanisms that we haven't seen in other traditional games before. So that's some of the reasons for the playtesting right now, is really a lot of focus on the events specifically, which obviously needed to be compiled towards the end of the process for the design of the game, because we had to see all the rules in place before we could actually figure out the ways that a lot of these great stories could come to life in the game. And it was good to see them come out as part of the experience, both events that I knew about previously, as well as some events I had not had the experience of playing with before, or knew. So as was mentioned in the thing, I did know I had a little secret information about the Crystal Shard event, so I was able to make a decision about that. So we'll have to put an asterisk on my victory in that game, since I did have some inside information actually about how that event would resolve. So
I want to add a comment to something you said about the development of this game and the design of games in general, is that the way the events built off of the game. So the reason why the events are what we had to wait till last to do the final versions of was because that the events use all the different mechanics of the game to tell these narratives, and to have these narratives affect the game using the mechanics of the game. And so that's kind of one of the aspects of game design, especially in larger games like this, where you have to develop it in steps in the order that things kind of affect and use each other. So that's why we started off with just how the base phases work, for example, before we moved into some of and get one era to work, before we got the how to transfer and play over multiple eras with long-term goals. And then once we got that to work, we worked on some of the things like crises, for example. And then we're finally to the point where, okay, we can do the last thing that really, really wraps around everything else, which are these events. And and so we're excited to talk to you about what we did in our last play test. And Eric, having joined the team in the fall, it was nice for him to get to see this up-to-date version of the game, and see how the events he's been helping write impact the game. And one other thought I want to have about the development of the events, where Eric was saying how we've been play testing these events because we want to make sure that they keep with the balance and keep the game fun. And an interesting thing that we focused on when organizing these events is that while events can have negative things happen to your empire, in the end, the overall balance within a single event is that at the end of the event, we want you that you can be a little bit better off than you were at the start of the event. You might have a big dip in there, but if you think of about the novel's narrative story, it might start high and then it has tragedy and then it's a build back up, or there might be a big boon at the beginning that they might find a house of candy, and then there's all of a sudden the witch that dips a story down, but by the end they defeat the witch and they're a little bit more wise and cautious and better off in the end. So we really try to keep that where was the beginning and end balance, where the start and end was important. What happened in the middle, yeah, we want not it to still feel manageable, but there can be some fun extreme swings, one of which we'll talk about in our experience in the playtest that we did at the last gathering we're at. So go ahead, Eric.
Well, I was just going to say, I think one of the best ways to start with this is to talk about, what you're doing first when you're getting into the game, which is to actually figure out what kind of alien race you're going to have. That's going to be, so important to, I think, both the strategic decisions you make over the course of it and also how you want to play the game. And that decision sort of tree was very intriguing to me. Of course, I knew a little bit about the two guys that I was playing against. These are guys that make Conflict of Heroes, that made Agents of Mayhem, lots of conflict-driven things, and so that may have had an impact on my decision to make the race that I thought would give me a chance to do something a little different. So,
well, in my defense, normally when I play with first time, because I've played this game a bunch in the development from at the beginning, but when I bring in new playtesters, I tend to try to play not so aggressive, mean empires. But this time I was playing with Eric, and I don't mind picking on Eric a little bit. So this time I went for a kind of aggressive militaristic empire. So I may have also been leaning into his expectations of me. So.
Oh, very good. And it didn't take long to be able to realize that Uwe was also going to grab a militaristic race there. You made those decisions pretty quickly, I think, in saying you wanted to be expansion focused and also somebody that was going to be militaristic. So that's why I ended up with my idealistic, thrifty peaceniks, so to speak. So
so I think what. Go ahead, Uwe.
You disagree?
I'm not militaristic. I'm just trying to help you develop your planets in a more efficient way. I'm looking out for you, Eric.
Well, so I think, as Eric said, we want to give you insight. How do you? The first thing you do is design your empire and your species. Yeah. So Eric suggested, just like I ran him through and helped him design his species, I wanted to go through the process of how you do that in the board game. And for of those of you that are familiar with the video game, the nice thing is it works exactly the same way as the board game as in the video game. All the steps you do in the video game, you also do in the board game with all the same elements. There's all the same traits. There's all the same civics. There's all the same government types, all the same ethics, and they use the same point systems too. So you can actually develop a species in the video game and port it over to the board game one for one. The only thing that the board game has is that we actually added a few additional origins that are not in the video game. And we basically, the reason we did that is that we want to have 4 different origins so that if a 4-player game, each player could choose a different origin if they wished. And just to give a little bit of diversity to that replayability. But I think I'd start out showing you what empire I designed for this game and the steps I did to complete that. So we nicknamed my empire the Space Elves. Yeah. And we'll get into why that is. But the first thing you do when you develop an empire, this was the portrait I chose. Oh, right here. And that's the first thing you choose. You choose what portrait you want, and you choose what your kind of home world you have. In this case, I had, shown by some symbol, a dry home world. like in the video game Stellaris, there are 3 classes of planets: dry, wet, and frozen. And so I had a dry world, and it's hard for me. I'm looking at everything in a mirror in the screen. This is what my species evolved into. And so when we're going to how the order of you design species, we kind of thought, how would this actually species develop? And so the first things that develop are where you evolved and what you evolved into. The next thing you choose is your origin. And that is shown by this card here. Like, what was the origin of your species? What led them to seek out the stars and expand into space? And in this case, this is one of the new origins we added to the board game, which is near extinction. My species nearly went extinct because we didn't take such good care of our planet, and we fought with each other, and we almost wiped ourselves out. But we managed to survive, and we came out wiser and more unified on the other side. The key thing that these cards do are they determine your starting pieces. They determine how many resources go into your empire tray and what pieces go onto your planet in your home system. So this is at what point you draw your first, you get to choose your home system, and you place your starting pieces on it, and you put your pieces in your board. So that's what the origin does. After you choose your origin, we have you choose your traits for your species. And your traits are, of course, the genetic evolved traits that kind of impact the behavior and actions that or efficiencies that your species has. And just like in the video game, you get 2 trait points to spend. However, you can gain more trait points by taking negative traits. So I wanted to take the venerable trait, which lets my leaders live a long time. So my species is long living, hence why we nicknamed them the Space Elves. But that costs 4 trait points. So I also took the slow breeder trait. That gives me 2 trait points. So my starting 2 plus a 2 from slow breeders equals a 4 from venerable. And again, those of you familiar with the video game, it works exactly the same in the video game. So that should be easy to kind of get to utilize. And the slow breeders, of course, means my species does not reproduce as fast as other players. My population does not grow as fast on my planets. Now, a key aspect of these is that the traits, most of these take place at the start of the round. They have start of round effects. In the board game, we tried having as many things that either are instantaneous when you play or interact with a card, or they take place at a set portion in the phase which says, do your starter round effects. This is so that whenever you're playing the game and you're doing all the other stuff you're paying attention to, you're not forgetting a passive bonus that you get from your species during play. Because I know when I play other games, it's really frustrating when I forget that bonus I forgot I researched 2 turns ago, or that I designed my species with, and I felt like, I could be playing so much better if I didn't keep forgetting the passive bonus. So that's why we tried making as many of these cards start around effects as possible. After you choose your traits for your species, then we have to determine what kind of government we have. So we've determined our origin, but what kind of government has come out of this origin? And also what kind of ethics they have. So you choose 3 ethic cards to represent what is the culture and what is the dominant political force in your government. And just like the video game, there are 8 different ethics. They're paired up, and so they're opposites. You cannot choose both of a pair. So you can either be authoritarian or egalitarian, militaristic or pacifist, spiritualist or materialist, and the last one I don't have out here is xenophobe and xenophile. And you know that these are double-ended because you cannot choose both in a playthrough. And so that way, that can't actually accidentally happen. You physically cannot choose materialist if you're spiritualist because it's on the other end of the card and disappearing into your empire screen. So that's one nice thing. And so I chose for this empire to be militaristic, spiritualist, and authoritarian. And that's because I really wanted to play to have a immortal god king. That's kind of the RPG narrative that I was role playing for my empire. And I love role playing games. So I really love role playing my species and my empire. And I love that the traits, civics, and ethics, and the other things I can choose from my empire really can help me lean into the gameplay for what I want to role play. So because I wanted to be a god emperor or god king, I paired this with the imperialist authority card. So I chose my 3 ethics card, just like in the video game, and then I choose a authority type. What kind of structure does my government have? That can be here. I chose imperial. It can be also dictatorial, oligarchical, or democratic. And so this was my government. Now, the last aspect of your government is that you can also customize it with 2 civic cards. These, again, are 2 bonuses for your empire. They work a lot like traits, but while this is species focused, this is empire focused. So for this empire, I chose to have an exalted priesthood because we have a cult worshiping our emperor, and we chose to be a feudal society because I kind of also wanted to be a little bit mean. My whole goal in this playtest was to subjugate Eric. I don't think I didn't get the chance because he had the excuse that he had to fly back home. But I think he was just seeing the imminent downfall of his independence. So all these cards get placed into my screen. So you see the traits and civics get placed in these front windows. All these slide in, and I also chose what kind of flag I wanted my empire to have. This has no game effect other than it shows what color I'm playing, and it's just give you some, again, aesthetic role-playing feel. But all these cards I chose, I slide into my screen, and that's when we end up with our empire kind of just nicely showing all your symbols for what kind of empire they are. And that is an important aspect of this game is what does it mean to be authoritarian? What are the rules I have to remember for that? There are no rules you have to remember. All the effects for all these choices you made, other than for your traits and your civics, their effects come up when other cards call out those symbols. It'll say you'll play a political card, says you have this effect, plus you also have this effect if you have the authoritarian symbol in your screen. So that is a great example of how we try to make this game really easy to get into. Few rules for players to have to remember, but with a lot of depth of consequences for your choices and gameplay effects that you get to explore, but it's delivered to you in a way that you don't have to memorize things or remember things during gameplay. So, yeah, the last thing I probably didn't tell is what the ethics, what do they start out affecting you with? And the thing that they first give you is that they determine your starting action cards in your action card deck. That deck building portion of the board game, the 3 cards you start out with are determined by your ethic. So I would get the militaristic, the spiritualist, and the authoritarian ethics cards, action cards. It tells me what the card numbers, like militaristic is card number 1 from my personal player box. And I put those in my action deck, and that's my starting action cards. And then the authority, my authority card, it has a symbol, but also has a rule reminder. Let me know, hey, there's this rule on the card that I can look at to remember what it does. And in this case, it's Imperial. Edicts, I can have basically 2 edicts for free. Edicts are cheaper for me, and that's my special. The other empires, most of them have to do with manipulating their deck building aspect. Democratic, they get to draw an extra card every phase. Dictatorial, they get to play and they get an extra free action card play. And while oligarchical, when they shuffle their deck, they can take out 2 cards and choose to put those cards on the top or bottom of their deck. So they can do a little bit of deck stacking. So your authority you choose really feels like how you can interact with that action card system we have for each empire. But yeah, that's how you design your empire. With you start with your species traits, your origin, your ethics, your government type, and your civics. Those are the 5 aspects that affect your gameplay. And then we have the thematic things like what your species looks like and what your planet looks like and your flag, just for dramatic flair.
Right.
So yeah. Like I said, I played a species of long-lived bird kings that had a priesthood cult that worships their immortal god emperor, and they would bring his grace to the benefit of the rest of the galaxy. And now I want the other Eric and Uwe to tell you about the species they designed.
Uwe, why don't you go ahead?
I'm sorry, I'm answering some tough questions here online. So as I'm typing, we have a time delay, and I'm typing, and my mind of who I am, I'm always smiling and all, and then I look what I look like when I'm concentrating. Geez, oh Pete, I look like one of the bad guys in these old black and white movies. So there goes my self-esteem. I'm sorry, Gunther. So one of the things that was very interesting, people saying that the objectives and everything, that as you're getting further in the empires, up in eras, that they maybe auto fulfill because you're already so advanced and all that.
Yep.
And that's not really the case, because the objectives change and become more powerful in the later eras.
Well, and also that's why we specifically have to have players achieve multiple objectives. So if you're in Era 6, yes, there are some objectives you'll auto-complete, but the point is you're going to have to excel at a greater variety of things, and you're not going to be able to auto-achieve all of those. And that's why we did it the way we did, where you have to do more within one era. Some of them you'll auto-complete, and some of the objectives actually scale with your era number. So as you go your higher era, it'll be harder for you than a lower era. And that is something we did on purpose, just to make that pressure, make it scales, makes it harder, assuming that they should be able to auto-complete, or some of those objectives will be easy for them.
So one of the things that that haven't really been covered with my empire, I was what kind of government was I again, Gunther?
You were, it says here, oligarchical.
Oligarchical.
So I have him right here, and
say that in English.
Or he was an oligarchy.
Oligarchy, yes. And then one of my ethics was also that as I made specialized workers, my empire's well-being went up in scale. Also, as I got these advanced workers, which gave me my rare resources and all that, that really helped for my research, gave me benefits in research. So I started really concentrating on the research. What many of you...
They were intelligent. They were intelligent technocracy. So he was with citizen service. So they're very heavily focused on their brains and technological progress.
And that's what it was. So what really I love about this game is you're worrying about the other people, you're looking at the objectives, but then all the shit happens because I started digging myself in a hole. I started building my technologies. I was getting my ships ready for Gunther, these evil little gerbil people coming from way over across the galaxy.
We could have helped you with all your problems.
That's
you
what
just
you
needed
say.
to submit.
I was preparing a welcome mat for you. And then Eric there with his stupid little oh, kumbaya, we're so good. Let me just grab all these little planets over here. While you're worrying about them, all of a sudden you have to worry about your own infrastructure, because all of a sudden I was so involved with my advanced workers, I didn't have enough labor to get my food and all my planets going so that I could keep my happiness quotient up.
Yeah,
and I started slipping down this evil slope.
Uwe was building specialist workers that produce research in Unity for him, and specifically he was trying to get his research up. And the problem is specialist workers have a goods upkeep, and you need goods to keep your approval and stability up. And so Uwe was just draining his goods. He didn't have enough goods. And it was okay at first because his approval was good and it started slipping. And he got to the point like, oh crap, I'm below 50% and I don't have the goods to turn this around.
Right.
And
it was horrible.
He ended up having to move some of his researchers down in a worker type, just that, again, when you lose a piece, you get their upkeep back. So a specialist worker has a goods upkeep. When he moved that specialist worker to an advanced worker, he gets the goods upkeep back and then was able to produce a good.
But I still have to go through the training. I still need that food goods to get the action to be able to move them. So I was in a slippery slope, which teaches me, the economy was going good. I couldn't get enough workers. I'd closed off my borders, wasn't letting other people in, and it went to shit.
Well, the thing is, so in this board game, you can dig yourself into a hole. You can play badly. And this is why we let players abandon their empires and start new.
Let me continue, though.
You did continue, and you did turn it around.
I did turn around.
He could have just said, I don't want to turn this around. I'm going to start over. He could have. But he chose it, and I personally love the challenge of turning something around. When things don't go my way, I love that.
Everything was going good, and then the goddamn space pirates came. And then I had to worry about the space pirates. And that was horrible. And then the stupid, the mine drones came up and hit you. And then
that was great. I needed that.
And then the void clouds. One freaking void cloud against my technology. No, thank you. Now, Gunta, who hit you? Something hit you out of the game with one of the events?
No, I wasn't hit out of the game. I had a horde of space amoeba, a whole herd of them, kind of moving my systems, and so we had to spend about 2 turns moving our fleets around, trying to deal with these space amoebas before we could continue to expand. But I wanted to have Eric tell us about his empire. Some interaction.
Let me turn on the worst of it. So I'm building myself out of this hole, and the damn virus, an epidemic, hits my whole solar systems everywhere. People dying left and right. Scientists, leaders dying. It was horrible. So I was waiting for Good to come right at that time and attack me, but he had his own problems. So before I pass it on, I want people to know that there's so much going on that even, I told Gunta, this game is just in what's happening with the events and everything going on. There's so much going on that even me, I didn't even have to worry about the other players. And I was playing a whole game by myself, plus having these outside forces on top of it. So I love that part where I can sit down even by myself sometimes and play an era or two by myself in this game. And I don't even miss that there are no other people playing with me. So it's that's phenomenal.
Especially in the first era where we did not start connected.
Right.
You start out very isolated in the beginning, and until you start connecting and get that. And when you play the game, there's definitely kind of like flow to it where you start out very isolated. You're dealing with your internal problems. You're dealing with a lot of NPCs, but then you connect other players and you get into more of an established diplomatic where you know where all the borders are, and you get much more into the inter-empire interactions. And then when you finally feel like, okay, we got to handle, we've put everybody in their place. We have our alliances together. We're feeling good. We're going to move towards ascension. That's when the crisis comes and the galaxy has to kind of reorient themselves to deal with this existential threat. But Eric, tell us about the species that you designed.
Well, again, I had an inkling of where you guys might be going with this, and so it was interesting to me to grab, a kind of a set of cards that were going to get me to be a different kind of race and have different plans. I was looking, both at the options that we had available to us, as well as looking at the ways that you could win the game for this particular era. And my tendency when the first probably 5 to 7 times I play a game is going to be all about eyes on the prize. How do I get to that? And how can we narrow the focus? And so I found the thrifty option. I loved that idea that I could be, I'd have to use my leaders, which is a very valuable thing. But I had to use my leaders to be able to turn, energy basically into a resource, and figured out that there was a good option to be able to focus on turning energy into food, which I could also use to feed my population. So both the option to win the game for by getting I think it was the grow economy was one of the early area objectives.
Yeah, where you had to spend 10 of one resource. You have to.
Yeah,
you start out with like 2 of each. So to go from 2 to 10 in one era, it can be quite the task.
Exactly. And so the other one I looked at was, grow population. And so I saw that there was going to be a connection there, because I could use food to get more population and use that population to be able to grow more food. I happen to be lucky enough to also have early stellar expansion. And since I had that, I already had a second planet in my home system, which meant I could pack on the more people onto my planets. And although that lowers your overall, your empire's approval, I've been brought in the Idealist Foundation option to be able to say that's every round my approval got a little better, because people know that my intentions are great. We're a bunch of idealists. So that was going to counteract the fact that I was going to overcrowd my planets really quickly in an attempt to try to win in this way. So I saw those things come together in a really beautiful way and said, well, this is what my blobby, looking aliens should be. Is we should focus on super efficient, thriftiness, use the efficient bureaucracy to get administration, which is very, very like, it's one of the other resources, but it's very money oriented resource. And so I figured by using that combination, this was going to be able to actually get me something interesting. And I saw somebody earlier post, what's the, I was going to buy Twilight Imperium for, what's the difference? To me, this already showed me how much of a difference this was. I like Twilight Imperium for a lot. It's a great game.
I love Twilight Imperium. It's
a fantastic,
every few months.
But it just doesn't have this level of story to it. It doesn't have the opportunity to be able to kind of dig in and figure out, who you want to be, I think, on a more interesting level. And
I think this game lets you play different types of empires. Like Twilight Imperium is really, like, at its core, a diplomacy war game.
Yeah. And
it evolves around this. While you can play an empire that's very diplomatic and very warlike, you can also play an empire that you can win and never go to war. And that's one aspect I like of Stellaris over Twilight Imperium, is that you can play more different types of styles than in that game.
Well, and if you've played Stellaris, the video game, that, there's so much there. There are so many opportunities to be able to explore, not just who your alien race is and everything like that, but the stories are great. They have a unique personality to the stories as well that I think is great. And of course, as Uwe mentioned, we're working directly with folks from Paradox, particular writer that's helping make sure we're capturing that feel that's got some humor, that's got some often dark humor, which I love, and that just adds the elements to it. And of course, obviously I'm a little partial to how some of this the writing's coming out, having been involved with it, but I think it really is going to give people a truly unique experience every time, which is what I'm seeking, in this, because I'm a sci-fi geek. I want to be able to enjoy these stories on a level that's beyond just, conflict. I'm not a aggressive conflict kind of player. So I love that I was able to sort of delve in on the bureaucracy and the efficiencies, and in this case, pull out a victory. So you know, and you know, that gets me to, I think, you know, the interactions, as Gunta was saying, you know, obviously when we're playing Era 1, you're starting out far away from each other, but it didn't take that long before Uva's expansionist folks came into my you know, field of vision.
They connected fairly early.
Yeah, we both ended up close to the galactic core and adjacent, and
I was a menacing threat in the void that they didn't know where I was yet.
Yeah, we knew
a little echo. Turn down your volume a little.
Me?
No, Gunta.
Oh, okay. So, that was. I mean, I knew there was going to be a threat. So, of course, when Uva came into play, that's when it came into the negotiations. And I like the open style of the negotiation opportunities, because there are specific parameters, you know, kind of on your negotiation board, to be able to say how is it you're going to interact with these folks. And you know, Gunta maybe can go into a little bit of the sort of mechanisms of that, but the idea of, you know, the first opportunity there is something that's free, and then subsequently it's going to cost you some upkeep to be able to maintain relationships with other empires. But we had the option to be able to look at a variety of things. Uva just looked at us and said, "Hey, these guys are researchers. They're gonna have good resources to be able to make use of in that way." And
Uva's very technologically advanced compared to us.
Yeah. But
which made them kind of scary.
Yeah.
Powerful ships.
We couldn't pay my workers.
Right, exactly. But
I thought cool is that Uva, he was so research focused. When you guys made contact, he wanted a research agreement with you.
Mm-hmm.
But you would not give him a research agreement without also him making a non-aggression pact with you. And so you guys had a little bit of a negotiation there, which was nice to see. And I mean, I have to be honest, I didn't love that you guys made a non-aggression pact. That made me pretty nervous. And yeah.
Well, and I, you know, I played enough games with Uva to know that I needed that non-aggression pact, even though he said, "Oh, I'm not going to attack you. No way."
and how non-aggression pacts work is that you cannot attack them for that era.
Right.
You can cancel between a game before you start the next era. You can end that non-aggression pact, but for that era, you make that non-aggression pact, they can't attack you. Now, and you can decide, say, hey, I'm not going to continue this non-aggression pact at the start of the next era, but that's how it works. So you can't just say, we have a non-aggression pact, and then out of the blue say, nope, it's over. You have to commit to it for the era.
Yeah.
I also want to say with Yin on some of the questions here, this game is so unique because you don't have to do war at all. You can go through pure negotiations. Depending on what your ethics are, you can't even do war. A lot of the storylines and the events and the anomalies and everything that are happening, depending on what your ethics are, what your traits are, what your government and everything is limiting your decisions in this.
Well, not limiting. It's what you decide to focus on that you have benefits on.
Okay.
Anybody can go after do war, but it might not be, you might be a lot better off doing diplomacy or doing something else. So you kind of want to focus on what your species and empire are strong at. And so it's really kind of how you decide where you want to design your empire and how the strategy you want to play them with to achieve your goals, both the public goals to win the era and your personal goals to eventually ascend and leave the game in victory. And the nice thing is, if you do want to be an aggressive fighting species, there are plenty of non-player elements in the game for you to have battles and fight with. That the only thing, if you want to fight, it's not always against another player.
Most of the time it isn't. Yeah.
Well, no, in the first era, the first few eras, there's definitely, when spaceborne aliens are actually a threat, yeah, there's sometimes more bigger things to worry about.
And remember, every 4 eras, you've got the crisis bosses coming in.
Yep, you have a crisis coming in, and that is something that is the crisis design that it's designed that it can wipe you out, because that is the threshold. That is the real, like, the crisis. I mean, it's the crisis moment. It's the crescendo of the book, the climax of the story. And if you can get past that, then it's kind of like okay, can I actually complete the objectives needed to ascend? But the crisis is definitely the climax. And my favorite aspect of it is that it forces former enemies to sometimes become friends to face. Yeah, I mean, it's you can definitely see this in a lot of Star Trek and other sci-fi settings where former enemies have to band together to face off a bigger threat, and that definitely happens in the board game. And as I want to also say that I talked about trying to subjugate Eric, but you could also be an empire that decides they want to form a federation.
Right.
And you can join together and work together with other empires in a cooperative, peaceful way.
Gunta, I know we're running out of time soon. I want to hit one thing, which has been a question here also. Some of the changes that we found and implemented, that you and your team have implemented over the last year from the play testing, what I really liked, and you hinted on it earlier, and I want to make sure that the viewers understand that we had a very solid game 2 years ago, but as the development goes on and the experimentation and everything, things change. And what I really liked is how you, again, for streamlining the game, making it easier for new players and gamers, taking out exemption rules.
That was from the beginning, Uwe.
Pardon me?
That was, I think, what you're talking about.
That was from the beginning. But
yeah, the only thing we've added in the last 2 years is stability. That's the only thing that's changed.
That's what you're saying, but there's so many little things I know that you've changed, like how certain type of the objectives, things you have to check for, are now part of the new era.
Well, yes. Well, that's where a good thing you said is those traits I was talking about, where they take place at the start of the round. And at the time we ran the Kickstarter, those were passive effects. So you could trigger them anytime they would be useful. Now, like, for example, if the intelligence said research costs you one less or technology costs you one less research, you had to remember that technology costs you one less every time you research technology, and not every player, especially when they're new, was remembering that. So instead, we made it a start around effect. At the start of the round effect, you can research an extra technology for cheaper. And it had the same overall effect, but it had a point where, I get to do this extra thing, and players then didn't have to remember it after that.
So I want to make
is a good example of that.
What I want to stress, see, and these are little things that, going to you being in there, you kind of overlook all these little details that have been made. And I see this little effect that we just talked about is huge in gameplay, because I have to tell the viewers, and people go, why is it taking so long? I get so many games through the internet, beautiful miniatures and all, and I play it with my group, and we go, Or you're trying to read the rules, and I read it over and over, and I watch the videos and read it. It's just a quagmire of rules, and if you do this, then that, and this, and this. So the streamlining and all these little subtleties that have been put in are phenomenal from this standpoint of how this has developed in the last 2 years.
Well, I can tell people why it's taking so long, Nuva. It's the amount of writing in the game, of the story events, of the writing all the different trait cards and stuff. It takes a lot of time to write all the card terminology and all the storylines in a way that they have cohesive language. Because as you develop a game, you play around with different terms. And so we have to make sure that the rules and the cohesion language use stays the same across all of these game aspects. And we have to do it one step at a time. Like I said, we couldn't start on these events until we had all the other game mechanics finished being laid out and knowing how we're going to discuss them and what terms we're going to use, because those are referred to over and over and over again on the event cards. And if we had to start out with event cards first and then finished all those game elements, we would have had to go back and redo all that work we did before. And so that's been a lot of the flow, the process of developing a game like this is doing things in order where we don't have to go back and redo things. And so now, Uwe, I want to talk about the other aspect of the thing that happened to Eric's empire. So after the first era, Eric won the first era, and he had to leave. So he had to fly back home to LA. And so his empire, he stopped playing. Uwe and I continued playing the next era. And we turned his empire into a fallen empire. So I want to explain how you do that and how that works and how a fallen empire behaves. So first of all, I have Eric's empire was pacifist. He was authoritarian, and he was, I forget what your last one, materialist, I think. Or you're pacifist. Yeah, pacifist, materialist, authoritarian. Mm-hmm. And so how that works, when you stop playing Empire, you keep their home system and their home planet. You take all the pieces off of it except for their home planet, and you replace them with fallen empire pieces of that color. So you put he was playing yellow, so we put a yellow fallen empire starbase to represent, this is controlled by the yellow fallen empire. And we put 3 ethics tokens. They're like the ethics cards, but they're double-sided tokens that show what ethics that fallen empire is. So we put those, the pacifist, the authoritarian, and the ethics tokens into the system. Then we choose a fallen empire card for his fallen empire. And you only get to choose one of them. We have 16 different fallen empire personalities in the game. We have the ones that are in the base game version of the Stellaris video game. So we have, for example, the enigmatic observers. But you can choose any of them that have a matching ethic symbol as the ethic of the fallen empire. So I could choose any of these, the pacifist, materialist, or authoritarian personality cards for that fallen empire. So that left Eric with 6 choices. Mm-hmm. And he ended up choosing the Enforcers of Peace because of what he did, where he really forced Uva into a peaceful relationship with him. He thought the Enforcers of Peace was a good personality for his empire. So the narrative for this says they will ensure the galaxy does not destroy itself in war, even if it means waging war. So they basically they're very much the ends justify the means kind of pacifist empire. And so that was not great for 2 militaristic empires like Uva and I. But how the fallen empire actually behaves during the game is that at the beginning of every round, again, this is a star round effect. We have the things that happen at the start of the round is, along with you doing your special star round effects for your empire, every fallen empire draws 1 AI card. And they draw 1 at random. And on the AI card, there's a list of actions they can do, but they have to meet the requirement shown here. So if they're at war, they do this action. If they are xenophile, they do this action. If they're xenophobe, they do this action. And if they don't do any of those, they do the default action listed on the back of their behavior card. So in the case of Eric's authoritarian empire, fallen empire, we drew this card where they actually expanded into another system. And so that determined the behavior of them. The next round, when he drew this card and he was neither of these ethics and he was not at war, his base behavior was to declare war on anybody that's at war. And you can surrender to them at any time. On the front of the card, it lists what their war goal is, what they get if they win the war against you. In their case, if you surrender to them, you have to end all of your wars with everybody, and they give you extra reward for ending your wars. So they really both threaten you militarily because they have possibly more powerful ships than you, and they give a reward if you decide to make peace with them and everybody else that you're at war with. They also have a request where, in this case, this empire asks you to remove one of your ships, and you put one of your numbered tokens from your empire screen onto this card, into their system to indicate what level of relations you have with them. So the first time you do this, you put a 1. The second time, you put a 2. The third time, you put a 3. Every time they make this request, you can choose to remove a ship to increase your relationships with them. And after everybody has a chance to do that, everybody rolls a D10. And if you roll equal or under your relations with an empire, they give you their boon or their gift. So every fallen empire has a unique action, a unique request, and unique gift they give to empires that have high enough relations with them, and a unique way they wage war or what their goals in war are. So it makes these different behavior cards make each fallen empire feel very interesting, unique, along with what ethics they are, determines what they do based off these generic behavior AI cards that are shared among all the fallen empires. So I hope that we will also be covering this in text form in our next update. We'll talk about how fallen empires work. So I know me talking, I'm an auditory learner. Some people learn better when they're reading things. And then I know plenty of you, it'll make the most sense and you'll get it when you actually can kinematically play with it and do it yourself. But I want to give you guys an idea of how the Fallen Empires work. And we have some really cool Fallen Empires in here. And I'm looking forward to you guys getting to experience them. So
we have one question here. A big one is with production and everything. And I just want to update on that. We've been working with Gameland Games on those. They're currently in the manufacturing of the injection molds. They've been going back and forth, and we had some already pieces made, which didn't work out to our satisfaction. So we went through the whole effort of redesigning the STL files, sending them back. Now we're very happy. Many of you saw the intergalactic destroyer, the crisis boss destroyer,
the capital ship.
The capital ship.
Time Master capital
ship. So cool, but we just felt it wasn't quite stable enough. Then the star bases, I put online one of the updates, how we made some very subtle changes to it, because when they were molded and put together, they were at a slight angle, and the two sides where you're putting in the tabs that specialized star base for different type of defenses or actions were not fitting exactly the same. So instead of just having one long slot going in, we made a square slot or a cross slot that instantly made everything perfect, which made us make the dies for the inserts, had to change everything else. Took a lot of heat because people didn't see it a lot, but we are making sure that all these little things, it's iterations. So all the STL files, everything is now in manufacturing for the molds. We are finalizing the trays, multiple trays. We decided to add some more lids to them, so that everything interlinks very nicely together with the boxes in the middle. So the big part, all this heavy manufacturing we're doing now. I'm talking.
Sorry, you're breaking up.
Oh, I'm breaking up. Can you guys hear me better now? Hello?
Not really.
Let me even. I'll join back in. Yeah, sometimes it helps. Go ahead. I'm going, Uva.
So the last things are that we're now working on also. We're going to be getting from them. We will get feedback on exactly what our timeline is. All the hard part of the big manufacturing input that we've been working on for the last year or so are now approved, and the manufacturing has started. So we're still making a few little adjustments on the tray lids, how things stick up so that they all kind of inner slot on each other as you're building up, putting your trays back. As we've told people, everybody's going to have their own game tray in which the 6-layer plastic heat staked, as you've seen that Gunther's been showing, those are also done, getting ready for the manufacturing. The heat stake dies, everything been made. So we're making great progress. I need to make sure with them what their timeline is once the dies are done, all the manufacturing, injection molding, etc., along with the vacuum forming for the trays. By that time, the verbiage catches up, and we can do everything printed at the same time.
Yep.
Printing goes the quickest. That's a week work for them. It's all this other work that takes so much time. Once I get from them a timeline, we're pushing everything done by Gen Con, because we have Gen Con, we have Essen coming up. We want this out more than you do, because guess what? None of us work for free. I do sometimes, but everybody else working for us doesn't. Me delaying this? No, not on purpose. Me doing other stuff in life? None of us are. We are so intent on getting Stellaris out, and we do it because we want the perfect game that people will like so much they want to buy the add-ons and everything. As I said, I get so many games I pay a lot of money for. We play ones and go, this isn't going to be one of those games.
Yeah.
So,
and I want to remind people that Uwe and I both have an engineering background, and this is one reason that we understand the manufacturing process very well, and better so than most other board game developers, because we worked in this manufacturing realm and understand how the injection molding works, how the material properties of the different types of plastics. And it's actually a lot of fun working with the manufacturers, helping them figure out how to do things that have never been done before. Like how we did these plastic player screens. We had to adapt technology used from other industries that are proven and well known that haven't really been used in board games before, to allow us to do something new and have the game organized in a way that we felt was better than other games. So we're excited. That's just a part of what Uwe is especially is really good at. And like he was talking about the star basis, he's really good at figuring out the material aspect and the design aspect to make sure the quality is top notch. And but moving on to the big thing that we're working on, that Eric and I are on the events, have been progressing really well. We're right now on average doing about one or two per day. And so that faster rate is helping us reach the finish line. It's really nice to see our personal kind of list of events that need to be done and how far they are, that we're reaching the end of this event writing, which we're very excited about. When we're done writing an event, and I want to remind everybody that most of the verbiage on cards and stuff has not been copy edited yet.
Yeah.
So once we finish, and it hasn't been copy edited, just because we don't know as we are writing all these cards, we might change a term. We've done that a few times, even in the last 2 months, where we said, you know what, instead of saying discard, let's use the word remove. That means we have to go back on all the other cards and change from discard to remove. And so basically we decide discard is for any time you're discarding a card, while removing, we didn't want to use discard for a piece that's not a card. And we thought that would clear up some confusion based off where they go and stuff like that when that happens. But that's a good example of now when we finish the events, Eric and some other of our editing team will be going through the copy editing process just to make sure we didn't miss. Whenever we decide, hey, we want to use this word, or we catch a mistake, we do go back and try to correct it everywhere. But we're going to go through that final process of making sure all the spelling. I'm a terrible speller. I rely on spell check heavily. But when you're using fictional words and stuff, sometimes that doesn't always work out well. So I'm so glad I have an excellent editor like Eric to fix my second language spelling.
Yeah, I was gonna say they're the engineers, but I have the editorial background from doing this for decades. So yes, and that just shows us where the stage we're in, because we are finalizing the specific language as we to go back through this final edit before we make that available to people.
We've hit our hour limit.
Oh yeah,
and we better go. Well,
yeah. Look, everybody, thank you for watching. We hope that you guys learned some new things about the game, and we are just absolutely so excited to get this to your table. And it's gonna be we're gonna have a nice little celebration when that day finally comes. But we are just working our butts off to get this done as quickly as possible. So, and look forward to the next live stream. We'll be putting up another update soon. And thank you for watching.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.